What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Better You Project, optimizing health, hormones, and aesthetics. And today I have a super fun guest that I'm so excited to have her on because we are going to put together I'm going to put together a great HRT workshop, and she's going to be there to support it and to host it and to do all those things. So I've got a very special lady on the line today. I've got Dr. Tiphany Hall. She is an expert when it comes to business growth, revenue strategy, product lead marketing, and has really dug into some of the AI-driven innovation. She is the Chief Growth Officer of Aesthetic Record and has scaled to be one of the top EMR systems and practice platforms for aesthetic practices. She has over a decade of experience and has trained clinical as well as administrative professionals through Gained by Galderma, as well as co-founded Aesthetic Next. She is one of the leaders when it comes to business strategy as well as growth strategy. So welcome, Dr. Tiphany Hall, to the podcast today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah. So I always ask patients and people who come on the podcast, like, how did you get into this type of industry?
That's a great question. I think it's the intersection of retail, medicine, business, all kind of culminated to one thing. And I was in my CrossFit gym and a guy walked in and said, I think you would like working for a company called Nestle that does aesthetics. And I applied for a job at Galderma, and 10 years later, here we are. So that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so after Galderma, talk about your pivot into the EMR system.
Yeah, I think at Galderma, I did so much with training, and the gaps were so apparent on the business side. People could inject, but they had no idea how to make money, profit, any of those things. And the EMR was really coming into its own, kind of still in a stealth mode. And all of a sudden we just looked around and thought, this is the time to really bring it out to the forefront. So I made the transition over, and we've been guns a-blazing ever since.
Yeah.
It was a wild ride.
Yeah. And it's so refreshing to hear you say that, only because it's absolutely true. I know that you focus a lot on business strategy and lead market generation and, bundling packages and, what's your profits and losses sheets look like, and how many practitioners have literally no idea. They just want to inject and take care of people and post their before and afters. But the amount of thought and strategy is what separates a single practice business owner to then being able to scale. And I think that's where you and things like Aesthetic Record can really help with scaling it to a much larger size, if that's the goal for the practitioner, right? But for today, what I would like to talk about, there's a couple different ideas because I know you're a very busy lady. So now that I have you, I want to talk a little bit about the state of the industry from your perspective, because you've been in this industry forever and you've worked in so many different facets of it. Tell me, what do you feel like the big shift, maybe in the last 3 to 5 years? Like, what is your observation?
Well, I think this wellness idea has become a huge thing, as we all know. You're one of the pioneers of that, if we're being honest. And I think it's this situation where women have been sort of left out of healthcare for so long. I mean, anyone who's a female knows this. We're kind of a second thought, and we've had to convince people that we're sick or that we don't feel well or that we're not optimized for ever. And I think in this space, we are so accepted, and people can walk into your clinic and say, Lexi, I don't sleep well. I'm not having good orgasms. I don't have my hair's falling out, whatever the things are that we say as a female, and you take us seriously and you help us, right? You care about optimizing our care. And so I think as we've learned that in the past 3 to 5 years, it's taken a hold here. And we're seeing that people are leaving traditional medicine in many cases to come to people like you, or to come to their injector or whoever's doing their IVs, whoever's in this space, because we're being taken seriously for the first time. And so it's been a really cool thing to watch. But I think as we look at our overall healthcare plan, it's both external and internal, right? It's how I look and how I feel. And I think for the first time, we're allowing ourselves to believe that it can be both superficial and looking great, but also how I feel is such a big part of it. So I think the journey to today, it's wild because no one knows how to do it yet. We're kind of at today where we were with injectables 15 years ago. We want to do it. We want to do hormones and exosomes and all these things, but no one has any clue what they're doing. So we're seeing sort of the same thing that we saw, in the early 2000s happening again, but now at this regenerative part of it. So it's a cool time to be here.
Yeah. Tell me, what do you feel like observation wise has been the shift in aesthetics? And I only say that again, and maybe I think my view is a little bit skewed because I am more functional medicine and I also inject, but a lot of, Sculptra is like our biggest ticket item here in our practice, followed by a lot of the PRP, regenerative, peptides, ozone kind of thing for aesthetics. Do you feel like the traditional, maybe more medical or aesthetic practices are noticing that shift as well?
Oh, 100%. I think this whole anti-filler movement right now has really taken some hold. And if you would have told somebody in 2010 that hyaluronidase would be part of your practice in everyday use, no adverse event, just part of like optimizing someone's face, they would have said, Lexi, you're absolutely insane. It's only for emergencies. But
Right.
think of what we're doing now. We're deleting things in certain areas. We're optimizing, we're fixing, we're tweaking. We're doing all these other things because our skills have advanced so much. So I think part of it's just skill advancing, but also to what you just said with the sculpture movement. We want natural. We want it to feel bioidentical. We want it to look, soft and not these hard, big cheeks and hard, big lips. This movement from big and flashy and wild, Texas, if you will, to now much more like natural look. I think that's big for our industry because it means less product and you have to be much better skilled. And so making money is a different game than it was maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, even like 3 years ago, I feel like
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
completely different game. All right, my next question, it's not on the list, so we're going rogue a little bit, which I know you don't care. What do you feel the impact of the GLP-1s have had on the aesthetic industry? I feel like it's like $1 million question.
I
Through
mean,
through the eyes of Tiphany Hall, like what do you feel?
it has shown us that revenue is a diverse and dynamic thing. If you look at the invoice amount today in a practice, it's not changing, but it's vastly different. And it's because the GLP-1 has taken this like major hold and they're coming in more frequently, but they're buying less over time because they're spending so much money on this. I think we're looking at for the first time ever that the face is important, but the body, they will stick with it. I think there's like a much better adherence or compliance, and there's just so much of it. But it's also shown us that there's a lot of BS out there and people who are fly by night. You're like, I've got a program, and there's nothing else. Here's a shot, here's a vial. Good luck. So I
Yeah.
think we've also learned that the separation between great and just having enough to say you have it is pretty big. It's a pretty wide divide. So I think the GLP-1 has given us a cool new area to treat. Now our body contouring's huge, but also the fact that you got to do more than just have it. Everybody has it. You got to really be a value add and innovative.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that because I feel like, through my eyes as a really, integrative, forward-thinking provider, and when I see some of these things, especially on social media, I'm like, they slapped wellness and GLP-1 on their program and they're like, "Oh yeah, we do wellness." I'm like, "GLP-1 is not wellness." Like, yeah, I have to bite my tongue a lot. Which brings me to like the next kind of section of questions is, so you're putting together the Aesthetic Next conference, and this has been a great conference. This is, I think, my 4th or 5th year going. My favorite thing about the conference is you have so many different tracks. And so I was talking to a colleague that I mentor out in Missouri, and the estheticians have chosen Aesthetic Next. So I get to see her again in Dallas, which I'm super excited. But what's great is that there are so many different tracks. So talk me through maybe your pivoting process, because I think I joined the faculty 3 or 4 years ago. And so it was like, here's a little snippet on some hormones. Now here we are in 2025 and we've got like a 3-hour workshop on just HRT alone. So talk me through the process of like how that happened for Aesthetic Next.
Well, I think for us, it's always been, what are people going to do? Whatever it is they're going to do, let's teach them how to do it the right way. And so I feel like if you look at hormones, unless it's someone like you who knows about all these other groups and BioT and A4M and places to get trained, the average nurse injector does not know where to go get trained for hormones. And because of that, either she'll do it not knowing enough or she won't do it at all and she'll self-select out. So for Aesthetic Next, it was always this idea that whatever needs to be taught, we should be the mouthpiece to teach that. Find the best people who can teach it, the best experts in the industry, bring them to our our learners, our attendees at a cost they can afford, and give them a ton of information, a ton of training, so they can walk back in Monday morning and feel at least competent, at least know what to do next. So as the industry shifts, we shift. If you look at 2019, it was all about cheeks and temples and tear troughs and cannulas and very injector focused. we've learned that, right? We have resources for that, but we don't have resources for HRT. No one's talking about these concepts with exosomes and what is a research peptide, and all these things are really important. We've got to be the person to do that. And so if no one else is doing it, I feel like it's our job to do it. But also, this is the movement. This is the future. And if we don't teach people, they'll get left behind. And so I think as the industry unfolds and changes and morphs, my job as a course director is to find people like you who know how to do it, who've been doing it for a long time, and offer your expertise to our audience and say, this is what you should do. And if you can't do it at this level, either train up or refer out. That's your choices.
Yeah. No, it was a very eye-opening experience. Last year, Dr. Sora and I did a workshop combined together, and people were standing and it was like a paid workshop, and people were standing, and I was like, oh shit, we need more chairs. Like I did not realize like how much of a need there was. And so then here we are, this next year, and it's HRT is just, and like I think our workshop had peptides and HRT in like 2 hours, and it's like, no, we need to expand. So how do you
think about HRT? We've been hearing in the news forever that it's harmful, right? Women shouldn't do it. It's harmful.
Oh yeah.
Think of all the misinformation that's out there, like so much of it, and how hard it is. Can you imagine going to your OBGYN asking for hormone pellets? She'd be like, are you crazy? Like, we're just trying to get babies born in low income neighborhoods. Like, we can't think about that yet.
Yeah.
They don't care about your orgasm. They don't care about these are things that are important to like mainstream medical.
Yes.
So now, since we are the people who can do that for patients,
right,
we got to know. And there's just not enough of us who have been in the industry long enough to think through that, I think, at this point, and not enough of you who can do it to actually teach and train and develop, the next generation of people who will be doing it. So it's just a huge need.
It is. There's absolutely such a huge need. So how did you decide in putting this conference together? How do you decide which abstracts make the cut versus maybe not this year? You're like, God damn it, Lexi, quit asking me these questions.
Damn you. It's super hard, I will tell you. Part of it is being the early worm. People who wait to turn in one today, which is very common. I'm like, honey, that ship has sailed. But we look at what are the big topics? What are the areas of gap? Number one, like what's important and what are the gaps? And if I can find places to fill all the gaps, that's where I go first. Who knows what those things are that can fill those gaps? And at that point, it's like, great, we need some hands-on for our newer injectors. We need to look at skin and focus more on that this year. So we map out like on a chessboard, what do we need? What do we want to cover? And then we start looking at abstracts and putting people in. And we look at, their YouTube channel. Have they been speaking somewhere else? Do they have really good clinical information? Can they be on a stage in front of 1,000 people and not shit their pants? I think that's part of it too. So it's really a combination of things. And also, are you easy to work with? If you're a pain in my butt, I don't want you. If I have to chase you down the whole weekend long, I can't do it. And I can't deal with the divas, and I can't deal with the just drama. We just don't. And there are people who've been there before that won't get to come back because it's just not worth the effort, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can completely understand that as well. So kind of shifting gears a little bit. So we're bringing hormones, the whole workshop to the conference. So if you are a practitioner and you're listening, what is this workshop about? So I'll talk a little bit about it, and Tiphany can talk about maybe what we talked some about the goal behind it. But really my goal, just as Tiphany said, is you have practitioners. Now it's almost like in order to compete in this aesthetic industry, you have to be adding some sort of holistic functional wellness program. I want to make sure, and my job with Tiphany is to make sure we're trying to do things the right way, that it's evidence-based and it's research-based. So how I'm going to be breaking it down is we're going to break it down to women's health and men's health. And a huge piece of it is debunking much of the research. And not only that, arming practitioners with how do you have this conversation where it's very black and white, evidence-based. And I always tell my patients, I'm not going to compete with your OBGYN. My job is to just inform you and educate you so you can make the proper decision on your own. So that's what the first kind of like section of the HRT workshop is going to be. And then we're going to get into some of the, what are the testing things that we need to look at? What is a really good hormone panel? What does that entail? What do these lab values kind of tell us? And then we're going to get into the most important part, which is the prescribing part. And so for women's health, I'm going to be covering things like testosterone cream, which I don't love it, but I'm going to talk about it just so people have that tool in their toolbox. I'm going to talk about testosterone shots in women, which is not super common, but we've been doing it in our practice for a little while here, and we've seen great results with it. I'm going to talk about testosterone pellets. I know just from having been to Aesthetic Next in the past, there are quite a few practitioners who offer pellets, which I think can be a great option. I think one of the biggest things, and I know this delves into your kind of world, is looking at patient retention. One of the best things that you can do is know how to manage side effects of pellets and knowing when to titrate down dosing. As you know, I speak for a hormone company, and I will often say, like, let's dose it down. Let's check a peak and a trough. So I'm going to get into the minutia of how I do that and what I'm looking for. And not only that, how do we blend our aesthetic knowledge and our functional knowledge to manage many of those side effects? So we're going to talk about things like finasteride and spironolactone, but I'm also going to talk about like saw palmetto and how they both act on same receptors. And so I'm going to give the aesthetic view and then the functional view. So I think it's going to be a very unique workshop, unlike many other conferences that I've been to. And I can say that because I speak on the stage at the Institute for Functional Medicine, and I've also spoke at the Aesthetic Show. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to marry both worlds at Aesthetic Next. And I'm going to show you, this is how you can do both very, very well. So we're going to get into that. And then the last piece I'm going to talk about is Kysotrex, which is the newest testosterone modality on the market, on how it's different, And again, practitioners may do none of these things, but at least the knowledge and the research is there. Then I'm going to get into men's health because, again, this is a great door that we can open for many of our male patients. And how many male patients I have who came in on the medical side who are now my aesthetic patients. So this is I call it cross-pollination. This is a good way to cross-pollinate your patients. So I'm going to get into managing testosterone, initiating it. And then the last section, which I think is super, super important, is how to monetize this. So as you know, clinicians are terrible business people. God bless them. We just don't learn it in school, right? And so it's kind of like jumping out of a plane and trying to figure out how to use the parachute on the way down, right? So that's my goal. Now, obviously, I don't have all the answers, but I have scaled a practice, to 2 locations, and I've helped numerous other practices kind of launch. So I might know a thing or two. But the monetization, the proper consent, legalities you want to consider. Again, I'm not an attorney, but these are things I would consider. And setting up with vendors. I think that is also really, really important. So again, I'm super excited to be able to host this workshop because I feel like there's a need for it. And just as you said, when you're choosing abstracts, in your point of view, having said this is what's part of the workshop, where do you feel like the inefficiencies are from the business perspective? Because I know that you've worked with practices who've like tried to roll this out or are rolling this out. What do you see are the holes?
Well, it's funny. I've been reviewing your content all weekend long for CME, so I know all of your decks. I think the inefficiency is they don't know how to charge for it. And we either gouge people on one part or we under index something. So we either charge a fortune for the hormones and the actual the pellets, let's say for testosterone, and the labs kind of get tossed away, or we just overindulge with labs and testosterone. It's just such a wide swing. I mean, there's no consistency. And I think looking at things like the revenue per hour, like what does it cost me to do this versus what do I make? And how does this keep a patient in my practice? There's so many other factors than just like the money part, right? If I'm covering my costs and making enough profit to cover all the things that I need to do, beyond just my cost, then it's like, what is this as a long-term plan? Like that, the guy that comes into your practice and gets hormones, he gets testosterone from you. He's feeling great. His hair's coming back. He's getting his skin improved. Like it was the gateway drug. So at some point there's like a part where you can almost cut your margin a smidge for the long-term gain, or decide this is your calling card and you've got to really value price like at a higher tier to show how much value it has to your client. I think we got to know who we are and price accordingly. We have like an identity crisis. We start one way and then we change the other way. I think when you know what your model should be, then everything else makes so much more sense to stick to that mantra the whole way through.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So that's one of the big workshops. So if you're coming to Aesthetic Next and you're interested in HRT or how to monetize it, or you just want to know more about the research, and I think this would be a great workshop to attend, obviously, because I'm teaching it. But not only that, there's a lot of studies in there. So you'll walk away with actual research and evidence to support the recommendations that you're making on that. One of the other talks that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to have Tiphany talk a little bit about it, is the ever-loving peptide therapy, right? And so Tiphany had me start 3 years ago, and I had just done again like a little blurb on peptide therapy. Tiphany, let's talk about how has that evolved over the last couple years.
Oh, sister. Right now it's in chaos, right? This like research only
Every
peptides
every day, every
every
day.
day. I think we all know it's a good thing. We all know that it's such a huge part of I don't want to say like balancing your life, your body. We know it's the right thing to do, but how to do it is still a mystery. What to use, where to get it, compounding, not compounding. It's like one of those things like I know I want to do this really well, but I don't know where the hell to go to learn. I don't know how to figure this out. And I feel like so few people are doing it at a high level to know how to really explain that in a way that makes sense. I feel like you do it so well, Stephen. I think Shelly Miller does a really great job, and there's very few of you. And so my hope is that they've heard you over the last 3 years talk about it, and they realize it's important. And now it's like, okay, now how do you do it legally, compliantly, to the right fit for the patient? What's good for your practice? We got to take it now to the next. Now that we've sold it to them, we got to figure out how to make it work in their practice.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And I've done already this year quite a few talks on peptides. And what's so hard is, it's going to be state dependent. Like, how many days I wish I lived in Texas? Because it's like the wild, wild. There's like a compound pharmacy on like every corner. And I love their board of pharmacy because they're very like, no, this is how we're going to do it. What's hard is my injectors who are in California. Like when they tell me I'm in California, I'm like, well, it's nice knowing you. Like, yeah, here's some vitamin D. Like there's just not a whole lot. So, while I'm super excited to be able to share some of these things, a couple of the things that I'm also going to be talking about in my peptide lecture is some of the metabolic boosters. So, when people think peptides, right? They think about semaglutide, and I'm like, no. Just so you know, there's way more peptides beyond just your GLP-1. So I'm going to talk about some of the other peptides that I don't feel like get enough love, but really can move the needle for people. Some of them are exercise mimetics, so they mimic the benefits of exercise. Some of them can help with histamine. Some of them can help with, the brain piece of it. I mean, there's so many great peptides that we can use. Again, what the hardest part is what state you're in. But if you're in Texas, this is for sure a lecture you need to be coming to because there's so many that you guys have access to, which is great. Another one of the talks that I'm going to be doing as well is a talk on the gut skin connection. So why I really like this one is because we have a lot of aesthetic practices who are slapping wellness on the end of it, which is fine. But if you're going to be talking the talk that you're doing it, like if someone's coming in and they've got, acne on their face, see the esthetician, get on a good regimen, but maybe we should look at your hormones, especially if you're noticing like along the jawline or if on the forehead, maybe you need some gut testing. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about why I would do gut testing and talk through some of the cases with melasma, rosacea, acne, some other things that are involved in that. And my hope is that maybe some of the estheticians would even come to some of those lectures as well. So I think
that's the hope. Like this year, we call it the skincare track because I think last year we had nurses who were like, oh, can I go here? Like, is this for me? And we had estheticians who were like, oh, I can't go to clinical because it's not for estheticians. We're like, no, it's for everyone. We kind of focus on like more of a skin care or skin analysis, skin depth versus it being more hormonal or even, more injection focused. But, it's funny that you mentioned with gut health. It's such a big thing right now. We're all looking at ivermectin, like, deworming and getting your gut health back in order. And we don't do it here in America, right? It's not a thing that we do in the US. Everyone else does it everywhere else around the world. We have missed the boat. And I think the gut skin health, I love that lecture that you turned in because it's like such an interesting concept that doesn't require a lot of effort. I mean, it isn't like you have to go do some big crazy thing, and you could have a tremendous impact on a patient and on their livelihood and how they feel every day and how they look with some very small things. So I think that's one that if you're not doing that, go to that lecture and figure it out.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
It'll be really good. Really, really good. So Tiffany, what is there one thing in particular with this year's conference that you're the most excited about, or something that's new, or something that you're trying out?
Well, we have a global theme this year, which is different. We're looking at 7 big areas of the world. And we have Kate Goldie coming, who I don't know if you know her, but she is a world-renowned injection expert, really novel techniques, very science-based and like just almost like physics of the skin, physics of the face. And she talks about things in a way that just makes sense. And so she's coming to talk about really the European movement and what she's seeing around the country, or her countries in the EU, really focus on like biostimulators. So I'm thrilled for her. And this year, for the first time, we have an actual cadaver lab, a beautiful facility here close to our office in Irving that is a world-class cadaver area. It's got everything you could ever want. So we're going to take the quality of that up a little bit this year. So big cadaver lab. But I think the big thing for us is just education, education, education. We have 115 CMEs, give or take. It's a frick ton of CMEs. So much content, and the business is equally as good. And most of it's CME approved, because it really speaks to what you said. The practice has to function. The practice has to run. It has to make money. And we're focusing a lot on employees. How do you raise a great staff, train a great staff, help them perform, be compliant with how you pay, how you run your overall business operations. So I think that's a part that we don't think about. And if you're a great clinician and a shitty business person and you don't follow the law, doesn't matter. Like, you lose your license, right? At the end of the day, we can do all these other things. And if none of that rests on a profitable practice that's doing things legally, none of it really matters. And so I think we've really focused on compliance a lot this year, and on the business side of compliance, not just, a pharmacy board law, but also like your staff and training and payments, and just so much more robust. But I think the big thing this year is just it's more. But the international flair is pretty cool. We got some really cool things focusing on the whole world and the whole global beauty movement.
Yeah, no, that's super exciting. Super exciting. So if people want to go sign up for the conference, where's the best place to do that?
Just go to aestheticnext.com and you'll see attend at the top. Go there, click through. You can see the schedule. You can see we have amazing evening events. We have a Nexties again this year. We also have our opening block party. We have a big, like a Greek party on Saturday night called Olympus Unplugged. So some really cool evening events and just like fun events that make it okay to learn all day long. Your brain is fried at 6 o'clock and you get to go have fun.
Yeah.
So I think just go to aestheticnext.com. There's a lot of promotional codes floating around. Instagram, I think you have one as well.
Yeah, I've got one too.
So I think yours is what? Is it U75?
U75. Yep.
Yeah. So use that and get your tickets.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention is the vendor hall. I would say that's probably one of my most favorite things about Aesthetic Next. It's like the Super Bowl of vendor halls. Like the amount of just different things that you're like, I never knew that, existed. Syringe. Like, I feel like I always walk away with like at least 3 new things that I'm like, and we're buying this, which is great. I have seen more compounding pharmacies show up there, which has been good for people to get sourcing. I know that there are just so many different things, from an education, from supplies to vendors, supplements, like all kinds of stuff. So this year we have a whisper suite, so you can go in and get injections. You can go in and watch someone else. If you want to buy a device, let's say, if the vendor has a whisper suite, you can watch them actually do the demo, talk to the practitioner when they're doing it, get your FAQs all answered. Yeah. So there's some really cool things there. But I think what you just said about the vendor hall, people underappreciate all the cool things you can do. I mean, we have a think tank. We have all these great booths doing all these fun interaction, things. But also they have all sessions. They've got all these sponsored sessions everywhere. Right.
Don't discount the fact that it's sponsored. There are some incredible faculty doing some awesome lectures in the sponsored sessions that you want to go to. Trust me. I've seen them. They're really good. Yeah.
The rheology lab with Galderma is probably one of my favorites. And I'm a trainer for Galderma, and I still like to go because I want to say who's teaching what and what nuggets of information they're going to be dropping that I can listen to. But yeah, I think the vendor hall is super, super cool. And I feel like there's always something every year. There's always like a new thing that it's like, oh, look at that. So that'll be really great. Really, really great. So all right, I think we've got all my big questions. And is there anything else, Tiphany, that you feel like we need to touch on that I didn't cover, didn't review? I talked about all my lectures, how to sign up, your point of view, why the shift.
I think one of the things you'd mentioned in your early questions was like, what's the hype? Like, what do we want to be over in 5 years? I got to say, watching the industry change even to this point, if I never have to hear about all the adverse events on Instagrams ever again, I'll be happy. You're scaring your patients, people. Stop saying it.
Yeah.
I think that's got to go away. I think the exosome craze is awesome, but I think people like you have to come in and dispel the myths and the rumors of what's good and what's not good. I think that we're just at this precipice where we have access to all this amazing stuff, a lot of power, but also a lot of responsibility. And we've got to be ethical and methodical and just scientifically thoughtful about it. And I think you're doing a great job leading the charge. So hopefully you'll keep doing it. But as a practitioner, if you want to make the jump, the time is great, but you've got to be thoughtful in making that jump to wellness.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you. I'll link all the site, the U75 in the show notes. So yeah, if you're interested in learning about aesthetics, wellness, hormones, peptides, business, acumen, all the things, you need to go to Aesthetic Next and pick a track and just start learning.
We'd love to have you for sure.